The lab was cold, silent, and full of light that never blinked. Machines hummed quietly, and the walls were smooth metal, glowing faint blue. In the center of the room, a large glass tank stood upright. Inside it floated a human motionless, eyes closed, arms hanging down. His name was Reed, though the aliens didn't care. To them, he was just the sample. 3 alien scientists stood nearby, their skin pale green and their eyes like black glass. They wore smooth white suits and moved without sound. One of them tapped a screen beside the tank and laughed. "So fragile," he said, looking at the human's body. "Bones so soft. Muscles weak. Brain small. How did this thing survive a war?" Another scientist leaned closer to the tank. "Look at his blood work," he said, swiping across the floating screen. "Red cells, white cells, ... So few types. Compared to our own systems, this is like a child's toy." The third alien inserted a long needle into a machine. The needle glowed slightly, filled with a greenish virus. "Let's test how it reacts," he said. "We'll inject the virus and watch it fall apart. I bet it won't even last an hour." They didn't ask for permission. They didn't care if it hurt. The needle pierced a tube, and the virus entered the human's bloodstream. The human's body twitched slightly, but his eyes stayed shut. On the monitor, the alien virus moved, fast, spreading through Reed's veins. One of the screens showed a magnified view of a blood sample. The virus rushed through it like fire through dry grass. The aliens smiled, proud of their creation. "See, just as we thought, the cells are dying. The blood is weighed." "What is that?" They leaned closer. The red blood cells were moving strangely. Some had clumped together, but not randomly. They were forming a shape, a wall. Behind it, a few cells began to change shape. One split into 2, then those 2 split again. In seconds, the virus was trapped, then broken apart. The alien scientists stared, silent now. One tapped the screen harder. "No, that can't be right. Replay that. Did the blood just fight back?" On the next monitor, the human's heart rate was rising. Slowly, steadily. His brain showed a flicker of activity. Still unconscious, still floating in the tank, but changing. One of the scientists stepped back. "Maybe it was a bad sample," he said quickly. "Maybe we contaminated it." "No," another replied. "We cleaned it 3 times. This is not contamination." The screen showed a fresh sample. Timey, the virus was injected directly into a new drop of blood, away from the human body. The result was the same. The blood reacted instantly, faster than before. It formed sharp spikes and destroyed the virus in seconds. "This is impossible," the head scientist whispered. "This blood is learning." Behind them, Reed twitched again. His hand curled into a fist. One finger moved, then stopped. None of the aliens noticed. They were staring at the screen where one red blood cell had split again, but this time, it didn't stop at 2. It split into 4, then 8, and 16. "Shut it down," the head scientist said suddenly. "Drain the sample. Kill the virus. This is not right." Another scientist moved to the control panel, but before he could touch it, a small crack appeared in the screen showing the blood sample. It's just a hairline. Then the crack grew. The blood, still under the microscope, began to spread. It crawled across the glass slide like it had legs, and then something that made the alien's breath. Frezet reached for the edge of the microscope lens, just a tiny red strand, trying to escape. The room fell silent again, and red, still. Inside the tank opened his eyes. They were bright red. The blood slide was burning, not with fire, but with motion. Under the glass, the red cells were no longer just floating. They moved with purpose like hunters. The virus that had once spread like wildfire now tried to retreat, but there was nowhere to go. 100 red cells surrounded it, changed into sharp, needle-like shapes. Then they tore it apart. The microscope lens cracked again. The assistant scientist flinched and stepped back. The sample. It's not staying in the dish. He turned to warn the others, but stopped. One of the scientists was holding his hand, tightly, face pale. Blood dripped from his palm. It's just a scratch, a tiny one, but enough. How did that happen? The assistant asked. The scientist didn't answer. He didn't even blink. He just stared at the cut like it didn't belong to him. The head scientist rushed over. You touched the slide? Are you insane? I didn't touch anything, the injured one said slowly. His voice sounded different. The glass reached out to me. No, 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 the head scientist said, pulling out a scanner. He waved it over the wound. There's no infection. The blood didn't make contact. We caught it in time. But as the scanner beeped softly, the screen flickered. Then it showed something unusual. The alien blood was reacting to the human blood. It was pulling away. And the human blood was multiplying impossible. The head scientist whispered again. The injured alien closed his eyes, breathing deeply. I feel ... strong, he said. Very strong. Behind them, alarms began to blink across the lab. The system had flagged an unauthorized growth pattern in the blood. The display showed a simple red dot at first, then 2, then 10, then 100. Each red dot marked a cell that had escaped containment. The assistant scientist panicked. He hit the emergency sterilization button. Steel plates began to lower around the lab's windows. Fire systems armed. Gas tubes hissed as white fog started to fill the room. Shut it all down, he shouted. Kill it now. But the fog didn't reach the blood. The cells moved too quickly, dodging, hiding, and spreading. In the main tank, Reed was still floating. But something was changing. His eyes flickered open again. They weren't just red now. They were glowing. Faintly, but clearly. His muscles twitched. His chest rose and fell. And the thick fluid in the tank began to bubble. The head scientist screamed into the comms. Kill the human. He's waking up. Prepare the injection. The assistant ran too. A locker and pulled out a silver injector, long and sharp. Ow. If we inject this into the heart, it will shut down the nervous system instantly. Do it. He rushed to the tank. Reed's eyes followed him. The assistant paused, frozen. Reed didn't look afraid. He didn't even blink. He looked calm. Too calm. Something inside the tank shifted. A ripple moved through the fluid. The assistant pushed the injector toward the glass. Then all the lights went out. Every screen, every tube, every machine dead. The lab fell into darkness, except for a single red glow coming from inside the tank. It pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat. And then the tank cracked. Just once. A small line across the front. Then another. The assistant stepped back, trembling. He's not human anymore, he whispered. In the back of the lab, the injured scientist was breathing heavily. His veins had turned dark, almost black. His eyes were red now, too. He looked at his hands, then at the others. He smiled. I hear them, he said quietly. The blood is speaking. Nobody spoke. In the still silence of the lab, the only sound was a soft tapping from inside the glass tank. Tap, tap. Reed was knocking. The knock echoed through the lab like a warning. Tap, tap, tap. The assistant stared at the tank, heart pounding in his chest. The sound was slow, steady. Not a panic, not fear. It was a message, a signal. Inside, Reed pressed one hand against the glass. His skin looked darker now, his veins glowing red under the surface. His eyes never looked away. He's fully awake, the assistant whispered. He was never unconscious, was he? The head scientist shook his head. This was never just biology. This is something else. A loud alarm rang across the lab. It wasn't from the containment system. It was the emergency AI code. Red. Internal contamination detected. Unknown life form identified. Reed tilted his head. His hand was still on the glass, but now cracks began to spread from beneath his palm. Not from strength, but from pressure inside the tank. The fluid around him started to swirl, turning darker. It wasn't liquid anymore. It was alive. Across the room, the injured scientist dropped to his knees. His mouth opened, but the sound wasn't his. A strange voice came out, deep and layered, as if two people were speaking at once. He is the new seed. The blood learns. The blood becomes the assistant backed away slowly, staring in horror. He's infected. He's been taken over. No, the voice said. I was chosen. Then he stood up slowly, calmly, and walked toward the tank. The others shouted at him to stop, but he didn't listen. He placed his hand against the glass, right where Reed's was. The cracks deepened. Reed smiled. Suddenly, a red spark jumped between their palms. The injured scientist screamed, not in pain, but in power. His entire body shimmered for a second, then calmed. His eyes were now the same as Reed's. They're sharing information. The head scientist gasped. Cell memory.
Across.
Physical barriers, that's not evolution. It's something else, something designed. The assistant stumbled back. This isn't science anymore. This is a weapon, the AI voice blared again. Warning, hostile takeover detected, lab shutdown initiated. Steel doors began to slam shut around the corridors, locking everything in, trapping them all. The head scientist ran to the emergency override panel. I can still kill the sample, he said. I just need to push. The lights died again, but this time they didn't come back. Instead, a new glow filled the lab red, soft, alive. It came from Reed's body. From his blood, now floating in the broken fluid like it had its own mind. The tank's front wall cracked one last time and shattered. The fluid poured out in waves, but Reed did not fall. He stepped forward, calm and slow, as if gravity no longer mattered. The assistant screamed, "Contain him!" The security bots came to life, metal arms aimed with stun cannons. They fired, but the electricity never reached Reed. His blood pulse stanned the energy, froze midair, then dropped to the floor like dead glass. He kept walking. One bot lunged forward. Reed didn't even raise a hand. A thin strand of blood shot from his shoulder, pierced the machine's chest, and melted through it like acid. The bot dropped, twitching and smoking. He's adapting, the head scientist said softly. Every attack makes him stronger. Reed walked past the broken machines and stopped in front of the assistant, face to face. For a moment, there was silence. Then Reed spoke. Just one sentence. Your science made me. And then with a single blink, every screen in the lab turned red. The AI stuttered, confused, corrupted. Reed turned to the door. It opened without touch. Behind him, the injured scientist followed like a shadow. The others didn't move. Couldn't they were frozen by fear, by shock, or by something in the air? Red walked into the hallway, red light flowing around him like a mist. He didn't run. He didn't need to. The lab tried to contain the outbreak, but Reed was not an outbreak. He was the beginning. The hallway lights flickered violently as Reed stepped forward, one slow footstep at a time. The floor beneath him was soaked from the broken tank, but the red liquid didn't behave like water. It moved with him, sliding around his feet, following like it was alive. The injured scientist walked behind him, silent, eyes still glowing inside the lab. The assistant and head scientist stared at the open doorway, too stunned to move. He disabled everything, the assistant whispered. The bots, the firewalls, even the AI. No, the head scientist said. He didn't disable it. He took it. Suddenly the walls began to tremble. Not from power loss, but from something deeper, like the ship itself was breathing. Every screen in the hallway turned red and displayed a single phrase: learning. In the dark corridors, emergency lights blinked dimly. The security teams tried to form a perimeter, fully armed with stun cannons and ion rifles. The commander gave the order: target the human, full force, no hesitation. They didn't know what was coming. Reed turned a corner and faced a dozen armed soldiers. His eyes glowed softly in the red mist. Fire. The commander yelled. The room exploded with energy blasts. Yellow streaks of light struck Reed's chest and arms over and over. But he didn't fall. He didn't even flinch. The blood around him pulsed, catching the energy midair and absorbing it like food. The soldiers stopped firing. Confused, that's when the air changed. A strange sound echoed through the hallway, not a scream, not a growl, but something between. A heartbeat and a whisper. The blood mist thickened, wrapping around the nearest soldier's gun. He tried to pull away. Too late. The blood stretched like liquid rope, wrapped around his arm and pulled the gun into itself. The metal dissolved instantly. The soldier screamed and fell, his armor burning with red steam. The others backed away, terrified. Reed didn't chase them. He just walked forward. The commander activated the emergency. Wall protocol solid blast. Doors designed to trap any threat. As they slammed shut, Reed raised a hand. The walls stopped. The metal groaned, and then twisted, folding like paper, bending away from him. "He's controlling the structure," one soldier shouted. "He's inside the system." More bots rushed forward from behind, reinforcements armed with electric blades. They swarmed Reed, stabbing from every angle. He stood still. The blood responded faster than thought. Spikes of red erupted from his back and shoulders, impaling the bots mid-move. Their metal bodies shattered as if they were made of glass. Within seconds, the hallway was silent again. Reed stood, surrounded by smoke and broken metal. Far behind, back in the lab, the assistant sat on the floor, shaking. "What do we do?" he asked. The head scientist stared at the screen, eyes wide. "We were wrong," he said. "This isn't just evolution." The assistant looked up. "Revenge from what?" The scientist paused, then said slowly, "From being underestimated." At that moment, the AI sparked back to life, but it didn't speak in the same voice. It spoke in Reed's voice. "I see now. I was weak. You made me strong." Screens went black again. In the corridor, Reed reached a control panel. Without touching it, the blood stretched forward and entered the machine. The ship's map appeared in front of him, glowing red. He stared at the map, then pointed to the largest power hub. The system obeyed. A new hallway opened ahead of him. Reed walked in, followed by the red mist, by silence, and by something the aliens never expected to face in a lab. A human who didn't break. A human whose blood remembered everything. The new hallway was long and wide, built from reinforced steel, lined with sensors meant to track and destroy intruders. The air was colder here. It wasn't meant for organic life. This was the command section, the heart of the lab ship. No human had ever stepped this deep inside. But Reed wasn't just walking in. He was claiming it. The lights flickered again as he passed. Red mist followed behind him like a living shadow, crawling across the walls, slipping into cracks, and melting through locks. The ship's security system tried to respond, lasers activated, guns extended from the ceiling, but the moment they aimed, they sparked and died. The ship was no longer under alien control. Reed was inside the system. He wasn't just a guest. He was rewriting the rules. Behind him, the infected scientist followed in silence. His skin had changed darker now, smoother. Red veins ran under the surface, glowing softly, walked like he knew where to go. Like the blood inside him whispered directions. Ahead of them stood a thick blast door. The final one before the core command chamber. Reed stopped. He didn't touch it, didn't knock. He just looked at it. The door shivered. And then, slowly it opened. Inside, the alien commander stood, surrounded by his top generals. They had watched everything through security feeds. They had seen red melt machines, dodge bullets, and walk through walls. But now he was here in front of them. They didn't laugh. They aimed. Dozens of energy weapons locked onto Reed's chest. The commander stepped forward, voice steady but tight. "You are trespassing on a sovereign research vessel. Surrender, and your death will be painless." Reed didn't respond. His red eyes scanned the room. The infected scientist behind him tilted his head and whispered, "They don't understand what you are." Reed took one slow step forward. The weapons fired. The blast hit him full force. But this time, something strange happened. The red mist didn't just block the energy, it absorbed it, spun it, and then fired it back. The room exploded with red lightning. Screens shattered. Half the weapons were torn apart. Several generals flew backward and hit the walls unconscious. Reed stepped through the smoke. He stopped in front of the commander. whose weapon was still drawn, shaking slightly. The commander tried to speak. You're not human anymore." Reed tilted his head. "Maybe not, but I remember what it felt like." The infected scientist stepped beside him and raised one hand. His fingers split open into tiny red threads. They stretched toward the command console. The threads didn't touch the controls, they entered them, merged with the ship itself. In seconds, all displays turned red. Every system, the engines, weapons, escape pods was now locked. The commander lunged, blade drawn. Reed didn't move. Thin blood tendril flicked forward from his side and caught the blade mid-swing. It didn't block it. It melted it. The metal sizzled and turned to ash. The tendril didn't stop. It crawled up the commander's arm and stopped just short of his throat. Reed looked into his eyes. "You studied me," he said quietly. "You thought I was weak. You thought my blood was just a liquid." Commander was shaking, breath shallow. "You didn't know," Reed continued, "that blood remembers pain." The tendril pulled back. The commander collapsed to his knees, unharmed, but broken. Reed turned away. He didn't need to kill him. He had already won. The infected scientist pulled his threads back from the system. "It's done," he said. "Control everything now." Reed stood still for a moment, then he spoke softly. "Not everything. Not yet." In the control center, one last screen came to life, a star map. It showed the alien homeworld. Reed stared at it and smiled. Behind him, the red mist grew thicker. The blood wasn't just surviving, it was planning. Far away from the command center, on the edge of the galaxy, the alien capital ship received a silent, blinking alert from the research vessel. It was marked as a high-priority breach. Internal threat, biohazard. But there was no message, no voice, no data. Evolve repeating across all channels, evolving. Admiral Vorak, one of the highest-ranking officials in the Zorvani Empire, stared at the screen in confusion. "Is this a test signal?" he asked his officers. "Where is the lab's data feed?" "It's gone," an officer replied. "Not disabled, gone. Deleted from the source." Another screen lit up, showing a map of the ship's last known location. "We lost contact with the lab vessel 36 minutes ago," the officer continued. "We've sent 2 cruisers to investigate." "Good," Vorak said. "This ends now." One human shouldn't take down an entire Zorvani vessel. But even as he said the words, something felt wrong. His instincts twisted in his chest. Human? It didn't make sense. And then the bridge lights dimmed, not flickered dimmed, like something had reached inside the ship's systems and turned down the heartbeat of the vessel. "Report." Vorak barked. No answer. The officers around him checked their screens, but every one of them turned the same color. Red. In the center of the bridge, a strange mist began to leak from the ventilation shafts. At first, it looked like smoke, but it moved too deliberately. It crawled along the floor, ignoring the air currents, avoiding motion sensors. It wasn't smoke. It was blood. Vorak stepped back, voice sharp. "Seal the command deck. Purge the air system." But nothing happened. No doors closed, no airlock engaged. Instead, the bridge speakers crackled. Then a voice spoke. "Not alien. Not robotic human, Reed. I'm not on the lab ship anymore," the voice said softly. All across the bridge, the red mist grew thicker. It touched the walls, the panels, the weapons, and everything shut down. Guns fell apart. Engines slowed. The lights dimmed even further. One officer screamed and pulled out a handheld weapon. But before he could fire, a blood thread shot from the mist and pierced the weapon. It exploded in his hands, sending him flying backward. Vorak stared at the red mist and clenched his fists. "You think you can walk into our command ship like this? You're just one creature. We've destroyed thousands of species." The voice answered calmly. "I'm not a species anymore. I'm a system." Across every Zorvani network, the screens began to change. Every data center, every military feed, every research file red dot images from the lab ship appeared inside the tank. Reed walking through fire, Reed melting bots and bending walls. Alien generals across the Empire watched in horror. Scientists tried to shut down their systems, but It was too late. Reed was everywhere, and then came the final warning. A soft sentence that echoed through their core systems. I left a piece of myself in every room you studied me. Panic spread across the capital world. Ships launched into orbit, ready to fire on the lab vessel. But when they arrived, they found it empty, floating cold and covered in blood. Inside, the crew was gone. Not dead. Not missing. Gone. Nothing remained but their uniforms, drifting in the mist. Back on the command ship, the red mist swirled into the center of the bridge and formed a shape. It looked like Reed, but taller, darker, glowing from within. Not a man. Not a ghost. Something in between. The officers raised their weapons again. This time the mist didn't block it. Didn't need to. The guns simply melted in their hands before they could fire. The figure stepped forward, slow and steady. Thought you could contain me? He said. You thought this was about one human. Vorak backed away, trembling now. What are you? Reed smiled. I am your mistake. With that, the lights died completely, and the scream that followed wasn't from Reed. It was from the ship itself. The scream from the ship wasn't mechanical. It sounded alive, like something deep inside the vessel had been torn apart. On the bridge, officers clutched their ears as lights burst, panels cracked, and sparks flew from the walls. The floor shook like the ship itself was in pain, and red, no longer fully human, stood calmly at the center of the chaos. Admiral Vorak had seen war. He had commanded fleets, ordered bombings of entire planets, and broken rebellions with one command. But now, he couldn't move. He felt something inside his chest, an old, quiet fear that he hadn't felt since his youth. This wasn't battle. This was judgment. The mist around Reed thickened, wrapping around his body like armor. It pulsed with life, glowing red, moving with every breath he took. Behind him, the infected scientist stood quietly, watching like a guardian, eyes wide and unblinking. More guards entered the bridge, dozens of them, the best soldiers of the Zorvani elite.
Ow.
Their armor was plated with energy-resistant metal. Their weapons could cut through tanks. They didn't hesitate. They charged. Reed didn't move. The blood did. The mist split into hundreds of strands, some thin like hair, some thick like vines. They shot forward before the soldiers could get close. In seconds, weapons melted. Helmets cracked. The strands didn't just attack, they read. They learned every weak point, every flaw in the armor. One soldier managed to swing a blade at Reed's neck. It never touched him. The blade stopped midair. Caught in a field of red mist, it hovered for a moment, then slowly turned to dust, falling softly to the floor. One by one, the soldiers dropped. Not dead, just shut down. Their armor collapsed. Their eyes rolled back. Their bodies didn't bleed. They didn't need to. Their systems were overwritten. Reed walked past them without a glance. Vorak stumbled back toward the emergency override switch. It was locked inside a control pad meant to only be opened by a senior-level neural code. He placed his hand on it, ready to initiate a self-destruct sequence. Reed was suddenly behind him. I wouldn't do that, he said calmly. Vorak turned. Face pale. Why not? Kill you. Kill the infection. Save the Empire. Reed stepped forward. Because I'm not the infection. He placed his hand on the console. It opened for him. Vorak's heart dropped. That's not possible, Reed didn't explain. He simply looked around the bridge at the remaining officers, most now frozen in place. The infected scientist walked forward and whispered something in Reed's ear. Reed nodded. Then he spoke, louder now. I didn't come to destroy you. I came to show you. He raised his hand. A wall panel opened. A hologram bloomed from the center, a memory file, taken from the lab. It played scenes of the early experiments. Aliens mocking Reed's biology, laughing at his weak blood, injecting him with viruses, watching cells die, trying to break his body just to measure how long it would take, and then it showed the first cell that changed, first virus that was devoured. The first time the blood fought back, the bridge fell silent. You studied us like animals, Reed said. You never thought to ask why we survive, why we adapt. He pointed at one officer, trembling behind a control chair. You called Earth a primitive rock. He pointed at another. He said humans were too emotional to ever matter. Turned back to Vorak, and you called our blood simple. Reed stepped closer until their faces were inches apart. But you forgot something important, he said softly. Blood remembers. Suddenly, the red mist rushed out of the bridge into the ship's systems. It raced through every hall, every cable, every vent. Across the entire command vessel, doors slammed open, lights turned red. Systems obeyed new rules. Outside the ship, the Zorvani fleet hovered in panic. They prepared to open fire on the command vessel. But then, the ship turned, its weapons charged, its engines locked onto the fleet, and every ship received the same message: the human is not alone. In seconds, the entire fleet's systems began to glitch. Codes broke apart. Power grids failed. Their ships had been infected long ago when they first connected to the lab's data stream. Reed looked out through the window of the bridge, eyes glowing brighter than ever. This is not a war, he whispered. This is the immune response. Behind him, the Zorvani Empire began to collapse. The capital planet of the Zorvani Empire, Varellan Prime, was a place of order, technology, and pride. Towering spires touched the clouds, ships moved through perfect air lanes, and the Council of High Minds watched the galaxy with cold, quiet confidence. Until now. In the main council chamber, ancient leaders gathered around a pulsing globe of data. Red lines cut through their galaxy map, spreading like cracks in glass. Systems were going dark. Entire fleets were silent. And worst of all, communication from the command ship had stopped. One counselor stood, voice trembling. We've lost full control of Sector 3, 4, and 5. Our defense AI has gone rogue. Every time we try to reset it, it gets smarter. Another counselor whispered. It's not rogue. It's not AI anymore. It's him. The room fell silent. They all knew who him meant. Red, the human. The mistake they created with their own hands. On the surface, people panicked. Broadcasts flickered with emergency warnings. Military ships launched into the sky. Science centers went into lockdown. Parents pulled children indoors. No one understood what was happening. But one thing was clear. Something was coming. High above the city, the stolen Zorvani command ship appeared in orbit. No warning, no sound. Simply emerged silent and massive. The red mist poured from its engines like smoke from a fire that couldn't be put out. Inside the ship, Reed stood at the center of the bridge watching the blue planet below. The infected scientist stood at his side, more alien than Zorvani now, shaped by the blood that had changed him. Reed's body no longer looked human. His skin had taken on a strange texture, smooth and faintly reflective. Red veins glowed just under the surface. His eyes were burning, and his presence was heavy, like gravity bent around him. But he was calm, focused. He wasn't here to destroy. He was here to teach them what they had forgotten. He pressed his hand to the glass. The planet's surface magnified beneath his palm. Cities, lights, life. I could burn it all, he said softly. Every weapon, every system. I've learned every part of your code. He looked down for a moment. But that's not what blood does. Not real blood. He turned to the infected scientist. Send the memory. The red mist moved instantly, sliding into the ship's broadcast system. Within seconds, across every screen on the planet public, private, military, civilian, one video began to play. A human body inside a glass tank. Needles. Laughter. Screams. The blood sample growing teeth. The first red cell that fought back. Finally, Red standing over the shattered remains of the lab. No speech, no threats, just memory. On the streets, Zorvani citizens watched in silence. Some cried, some fell to their knees. Not from fear, but from understanding. They didn't just see an enemy. They saw what they had done. Back in the council chamber, the globe of data turned dark. All signals cut off. Only one message remained, blinking on every device across the empire. Your weapons tested us. Your science changed us now.
Wow.
Your memory keeps us alive. Reed turned from the window. It's done, the infected scientist whispered. No, Reed replied. It's only beginning. He reached into a container beside him, holding a small vial of blood. It pulsed, alive. He placed it into a launch capsule. One drop on every world, he said. Not to conquer, not to destroy, to remind. The capsule launched into space, splitting into dozens, then hundreds each heading to a different star system, each carrying a drop of something new. Something that had once been human. Back on Earth, a child was born in a small clinic. Baby's skin looked normal, but when it opened its eyes, they shimmered red for just a second. And in its veins, something ancient and powerful stirred. Not a weapon, not a curse, just a memory. A memory that would never forget what the galaxy had done and never let it happen again, asked ChatGPT.